Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and I'm here to do a little bit of a follow up because I made a prediction back at the beginning of July, and I thought now that July is over, it'd be interesting to look back and see how it turned out. This prediction was made at the beginning of my review for Jurassic World Rebirth, where I noted that we were going to have three major releases in the month of July. Obviously, there was Rebirth, which was the movie I reviewed in that video. Then there would be James Gunn's Superman and Fantastic Four First Steps. What I predicted was that, in all likelihood, Jurassic World Rebirth was going to be a box office hit. Regardless of whether people liked it or not, it was probably going to make money because it seems like every Jurassic movie makes money. Fantastic Four, on the other hand, I predicted was going to be a box office bomb. And Superman, well, that one had too many variables. It wasn't going to be easy to predict. It could flop, it could soar. Who knew? At that point, I did have my own suspicions that it was probably going to land in second place, that it would, at the very least, do better than Fantastic Four. But whether it was going to succeed or fail, not even I could tell. So, we're out of July at this point. How did that prediction turn out? Well, Jurassic World Rebirth definitely came out in first place, in terms of finances anyway. Again, we're just looking at the box office here. All three of the movies have people who support them, certainly, who say that they're good. But in terms of financial gain, Jurassic World Rebirth took the first spot. In fact, as of this posting, it is the fourth highest grossing movie of the year 2025. Now, it might not hold that position forever. There are still other movies coming out this year, of course. The holiday season is coming up. That's going to be a big time for certain movies. But at the very least, it's still in a pretty good position to stay in the top 10. Now, why did it do so well? Oh, there's a whole bunch of factors. One of those advantages is when it was released, because not only was it the first one out of the gate, but it also managed to release unopposed on a nice long holiday weekend in the middle of summer, which is like prime movie going time, basically. You could almost say it had an unfair advantage in that regard, but I mean, that was strategic, right? That's what Universal wanted. They knew if they released their movie on that particular weekend, then it was probably going to do really, really well. But then there's also the fact that it's something a little bit different from the other blockbusters. The Jurassic series is a dinosaur based franchise, and dinosaur movies used to be far more common. Ironically, before the first Jurassic Park, that's kind of what did the whole thing in. Once Jurassic Park came along, nobody else wanted to make another dinosaur movie because nobody thought they could possibly top it. So, pretty much since 1993, when it comes to theatrical movies anyway, Jurassic has been the only game in town. Unless you count Godzilla, because Godzilla is technically based on a dinosaur. But if you do, then the number of dinosaur franchises in the theatrical movie world jumps from one to two. And neither of them are released that frequently. Now, contrast that with the superhero genre, where we get multiple movies a year every year, three or four of which are usually from Marvel. That's a lot. So, not that I think people are really done with superheroes per se. I'll get into that a little bit more later. But I do think that when something else comes along that's not a superhero thing, it's automatically going to get attention based on the fact that it's different. So naturally, it was going to draw people in. Plus, Jurassic is kind of a trusted brand at this point. Even if there's only one movie that all of us agree is actually good, every one of the other movies has its fans somehow. So at this point, it all just kind of evens out, and people's attitudes are either going to be, all right, yes, a new Jurassic movie, or they're going to be, oh, a new Jurassic movie. Guess I'll go see it, and hey, maybe they won't have screwed it up so bad this time. Whichever is the case, it drew people in. So that part of the prediction very much came true. Jurassic World Rebirth took the top spot in terms of box office, and it's not likely to get knocked down by either of the other two, which means the superheroes were always going to be competing for second place rather than first. Who got second? Well, let's move on. Okay, so Fantastic Four Rebirth was a movie I predicted was going to bomb in that same video. Now, it had a strong opening weekend. So strong, in fact, that people were thinking maybe it will be a hit after all, especially since a lot of the reviews came out saying that it was surprisingly good. Always with caveats, of course, plenty of criticism to level, but a lot of the people who were expecting to hate it didn't. So there was positive word of mouth going around. But then the second weekend came along, and there was a sharp decline. I initially read that it was like an 80% drop in the box office. I've since seen that number backed off to somewhere in the 60s, but that's still a pretty significant drop, and not as significant of a drop as Superman, which we'll be getting to a little bit later. So at this point, Fantastic Four First Steps is pretty much being written off as a flop. Maybe not a complete disaster, but it's definitely trailing at a distant third place. How did that happen? Good grief, how did it not happen? I mean, just look at everything that's been surrounding this movie. The advertising campaign between the trailers and the press junkets and the viral interview clips and everything all seemed like they were tailor made to drive people away from this movie, which, if that was the intention, good job. Apparently, it worked. And even when I first saw the trailer, I did a video on it saying it didn't make me feel anything. And that was before all the controversy about, oh, the Sue Storm is going to be the leader, Johnny Storm is going to be emasculated, Reed Richards is going to be pathetic, the Thing is also there, Silver Surfer's a woman, all of that stuff. A lot of which, according to people who have seen the movie, didn't turn out to actually be true, or at the very least, it wasn't as severe as all the reports were making it out to be. And yet, that was the impression a lot of people were getting. And if you haven't figured it out by now, that's the sort of thing that people have gotten sick of. So naturally, they were going to be driven away. What did you expect? But it's not just the advertising for Fantastic Four, it's the MCU as a whole. The MCU has been in a steady decline since Avengers Endgame. It didn't hit right away, but it was pretty clear that the handwriting was on the wall. The first few movies that came out after Endgame, because people were still riding on that high, they still did really well, but they weren't being as well received, with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home. That one got a lot of love, I think largely because of the nostalgia. But even that one, the sheen is starting to dull a little bit with a lot of people. But everything else, I mean, my word, Thor Love and Thunder is now considered a go-to standard for bad movies. What does that tell you? And as it's continued, things haven't exactly gotten better. Preceding Fantastic Four this year, we also got Captain America Brave New World and New Thunder Venger Bolts, whatever it winds up being called. Neither of which were really that successful. That's the thing. People don't actually like these movies. Some people do. Some people are saying that they're really good, but most people are staying away because there was so much bad before it that the good, if there is any good coming after it, well, that's going to suffer the consequences. Kind of like how people didn't really have anything against Solo, a Star Wars story. What they didn't like was The Last Jedi. Of course, it also doesn't help that one of the more successful MCU entries is Deadpool and Wolverine, which is basically the Blazing Saddles of the MCU. It is a relentless R-rated mockery of the whole concept, And I mean, you know the legend about how Blazing Saddles killed the Western, right? It's not 100% true. They're obviously they still continued making Westerns well after Blazing Saddles, but Blazing Saddles did play its part. When the genre reaches the point of parody in that regard, yeah, that's when you should know that you're done. And yet, for some reason, Marvel's still going, as if it's in denial or something. And then, of course, there's the general controversies that have been surrounding Disney as a larger company as of late, which I won't get into here. You probably have heard enough of it from other channels. But you put it all together, there was no way Fantastic Four First Steps stood a chance. There was just no way. It was doomed, if you'll pardon the expression. So I would say that part of the prediction also did well. Unless there's some sort of really drastic upturn in the next couple of weeks, I don't see that changing. I'm pretty sure Fantastic Four First Steps is gonna land in the failure category when all is said and done. Last but certainly not least, we have Superman, which I said was difficult to predict. Although, like I also said, I did have a feeling it was at least going to do better than Fantastic Four. Why? Well, Marvel might be the bigger brand, but Superman is the bigger character. He's always going to be a bigger deal than the Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, true believers, but that's just the case. He was the first superhero, he's the most iconic superhero. Plus, James Gunn had his own following, of course. So, I figured people were going to be following him specifically because it's him over to DC. So, where did Superman end up falling? Well, that's where it gets a little bit weird. First of all, in terms of box office, it is definitely not doing so well. It's ahead of Fantastic Four, but it is well behind Jurassic World Rebirth. And it's probably going to flop as well in the long run. I mean, it's kind of an odd scenario because it's doing better than the worst predictions for it, but it's doing worse than the best predictions for it. So clearly, people just weren't turning out in the numbers that were hoped for. And yet, Superman seems to have left quite a footprint, hasn't he? Like, even though the movie is not doing financially well, we're still talking about it. And I think that's pretty significant because a lot of the time when a movie drops in theaters and it's kind of flopping, people will generally move on from it, especially if it's not getting any kind of a strong reaction. Superman, of course, the strongest reaction you're going to get from that is from the Snyder Bros. And even they in the long run are perpetuating the conversation about it, ironically enough. But in a society that's steadily losing its attention span, the fact that we're still talking about Superman, even though it's not supposedly a success, that alone is pretty significant. But also look at the larger impact it's had. Interest in dog adoption went up, I think, 500% just because crypto is in the movie. James Gunn finally showed people a form of crypto they can be investing in. I mean, that alone, it's kind of heartwarming to me as a dog person. But when was the last time that sort of thing happened with a movie? And speaking of when was the last time it happened, I've also read that sales of Superman comics have increased since the movie's debut. And that doesn't happen. Like, you've probably seen a lot of people saying that even though both of the Black Panther movies did gangbusters in theaters, that never translated into sales of Black Panther comics. Black Panther comics remained steadily in the toilet in terms of sales. And yet, with this Superman movie that most people are only willing to say is just okay, they're going to comic book shops and buying Superman comics or buying collections of them or something. Again, not something you normally see. And then you have the whole kindness is the new punk rock saying becoming a mantra among people. In short, Superman seems to have actually made an impact despite the box office. Talk about a wild card, am I right? So, I guess that part of the prediction was also kind of true because I couldn't predict it, and who could have predicted this would be the outcome? Somewhere, having it fall somewhere in the middle of not being a total flop, but not being a runaway success, and somehow still managing to have a lasting impact beyond itself. I couldn't have seen that coming. So, what does all of this mean for the future? Well, no doubt we're going to get another Jurassic movie at some point. And if Primitive War does well in theaters, who knows? Maybe we'll start seeing more dinosaur movies in general. Maybe dinosaurs will start to become more prevalent like they used to be. And they will gradually move in where superheroes are moving out. Speaking of which, are superheroes on their way out? Well, I definitely think Marvel is on its way out. It had a darn good run, don't get me wrong. From Iron Man all the way to Endgame, it pretty much held the entire world's attention. But that seems to be over now. Since they've been blowing it in theaters and also blowing it with Disney Plus series, people are just losing interest. People in general just don't expect Marvel to be producing quality anymore because for a while there they stopped altogether. So it seems like people are going to be moving on from that. Obviously, they're still moving forward with the movies they're already shooting and everything, although who knows if that's going to be worth it in the long run. But as for what comes next, I don't know. I'd be bracing myself for the end if I were you guys, or at the very least bracing myself for a reboot like what DC did. Now DC, things might still be up in the air, but they're moving forward with their first few movies as well. At least some of them, anyway. And again, Superman didn't exactly do great this time, but if the movie's really having that big of an impact, it might mean it might be good for the future. You never know. It might draw more people in a bit more gradually, but we have no way to know at this point. Basically, DC really needs to knock it out of the park with the next few movies, or else they're gonna be failing again as well. And if that happens, I don't think superhero movies are going to completely go away, but I do think they're going to become far less frequent. Again, it's kind of like the Western, right? Westerns used to dominate pop culture, big screen, small screen, radio, but after a certain point, people just got sick of it People could only people were starting to satirize it, make fun of it and everything. It eventually slowed down to a snail's pace. You still get westerns every once in a while. In fact, some of the most popular streaming series right now could technically be classified as westerns, and we've gotten some big high profile western movies every few years or so, but they're not nearly as prevalent as they used to be. I see superheroes going a similar route. They had a pretty good run from basically 1998 when Blade started it all the way up to now, but they're stumbling, they're struggling. And Marvel, I'm pretty sure, is gonna throw in the towel at some point and go back to doing only a few movies every so often. DC needs to knock it out of the park, or else they'll be doing the same thing. But I don't think we're gonna see it completely end. It'll probably be kind of like it was in from like the 80s and into the 90s. Every once in a while you get one, but you're not going to be getting like 5 or 6 a year, plus a bunch of shows on streaming or cable or whatever you're watching it on. So that's what I predict this time around. Will it actually come true? Heck if I know. I only pretend to be clairvoyant. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.